so far as to say that no single individual since Cairns was Cairns in the 1870s has done more in terms of strategic vision, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, and even as a community person to contribute to Cairns and Far North Queensland. I think it's impossible to overstate the contribution that George has made to Cairns and Far North Queensland, indeed Australia.
I was born in Cairns. All my ancestors were in Cape York, so I've got a real affinity for the area. I think it's got great natural beauty, natural assets which are underdeveloped even today, and I've never wanted to live anywhere else, and being able to help in some way achieving that has been one of the very rewarding parts of my life. The whole of Australia was still suffering from the 1960 credit squeeze. The sugar industry was going to bulk sugar loading, so there were 600 wharfies on the wharf. Most of them lost their jobs. So it was a bad time to be starting in business, but I was confident I could survive, and I just had to get known, and I didn't get much for the first 2 years, I'll tell you. But anyway, that's the way it goes. I think I did become expert in planning subdivisions and town planning, even if I say so myself.
Skyrail is an iconic Australian tourism destination these days. We sell the Far North as the reef and the rainforest. But looking at the rainforest was never easy for ordinary tourists. But Skyrail has enabled 600,000 or 700,000 people a year not only to see the rainforest, but appreciate the rainforest and even value the rainforest.
Skyrail was the first non-accommodation tourism operation in the world to get Green Globe accreditation.
Developing Skyrail was a challenge. Getting approval in the first place to look at building a cableway through the Barron Gorge National Park was a big enough issue in itself. So this was in the late 80s. Just when that approval was there and they were starting to move forward, the pilots dispute occurred. August to December 1989, decimated the tourism industry, no doubt trashed the business plan for Skyrail. Then at the end of the year, the government changed after 32 years of National Party government. George is just dealing with that, and they decide to list the wet tropics on the World Heritage List. And then next, the Native Title Act. And of course all of that country was, there were native title owners to it. And I think it's a measure of the man, George Chapman, his patience, his persistence, his belief, and his unfailing good humour that enabled him to deal with all of those challenges and get such a wonderful outcome in the end. Leaving Skyrail aside, I think the single biggest contribution that George made to Cairns and Far North Queensland was his active support of the international airport. George could see more than anybody else the value of this. So it was the most significant project probably the last 50 years. Now something like 5 million passenger movements a year. No one can ever underestimate George's visionary role in respect of that airport.
I said this will be the most important thing to happen to Cairns in the second half of the 20th century. That's on record. We got the opportunity to buy the TEN network, which was the deal of the century according to BRW. It was a phenomenal deal. We ran it differently and made a lot of money out. And I chose to resign from TEN because I'd been there for 8 years and took on I stayed as chairman of TAB, which then became Unitab, and which grew and grew and grew, and it floated for 260 million, I think, and ended up a $3 billion company, which 10 telecasters had done through TEN Network. So they both ended up very successful. I was chairman of both those companies, and I think I was lucky to be at the right place at the right time.
He was chairman of the Far North Queensland Promotions Bureau. He was on the board of the Far North Queensland Youth Assistance Fund. He was on the Far North Queensland Tertiary Education Committee. He was a counsellor with James Cook University. He was on the board of the Queensland Cancer Fund. He was also an alderman on the Cairns City Council and chairman of the Port Authority. I think his persistence, his patience, his belief, I think that he made all of his decisions, whether in business, whether in personal life or what, based on a strong value system that saw him through the good times and the bad times.
What you learn from living in a small town of 100 people in the country, you become self-reliant. You rely on yourself to get on in life. Don't follow the herd, make up your own mind. And that is something that I've done throughout life. I've seen it happen so often that the majority are wrong. The airport in Cairns is a good example. I've always taken risks. I try to assess the upside and downside, so I'm never more exposed than I can handle. I'm not stupidly risk prone. I haven't gone broke like a lot of developers. Till I was about 50, I don't think I had made a commercial mistake, and I probably thought I was a bit bulletproof, and I've made plenty since then, but I've still managed the risk so as I don't get too badly hurt if it goes wrong. I think probably I'd have to say Skyrail, it was so difficult and so iconic and such a major contribution, but I think I'm very grateful that I've had the ability to be involved in the major successful ASX companies.
After being involved in so many different activities, an entrepreneur, a business person, company director, and to get through all of that and be successful, but most of all to be highly respected by colleagues, by business people, by the community in general, has to be more than anybody could ever ask. Everybody in Far North Queensland has sort of taken ownership of Skyrail. It's something I think everybody is proud of. All of those days when it was controversial, they are long gone. So it's a community asset these days, and the average person in Cairns thinks it's theirs. It's just a wonderful natural asset. I think an asset to Far North Queensland, but an asset to Australia.